Welcome to Tales from the Tables with your hosts, Rob Bradley,
John Charles Ceccarelli,
and James Burrows.
Yo, how are we doing? Episode 18. Woo! Here we go.
Yo ho!
Wow. Yeah. Hey. How you doing?
Hi.
Sticking
Guys
that
all right?
pirate theme.
Yeah,
Yeah?
right.
Yeah.
We were just
Guys all
talking
right?
about pirate shows, and we were talking about One Piece because I've just started that on Netflix and the live action, not the 1,000 episode long anime yet. And then James, you were talking about how good Black Sails is.
Black Sails. I think it's my favorite pirate thing of all time. And
Yeah.
Oh,
Pirates,
really?
Pirates of the Caribbean is very good, but Black Sails, it's like a prequel to Treasure Island, is awesome.
Oh, wow. Is it really?
Yeah. So it's
Oh,
it's
wow.
written as like then it incorporates real life pirates as well into the narrative, and it's very cool. But yeah, it's
wow.
it's
Awesome.
really strong.
I'm definitely going to check it
I
out.
need more pirate in my life. I will contest you. No matter how good you say Black Sails is, I think the definitive action entertainment in terms of the pirate world of all time is the Muppet Treasure Island.
I immediately concede.
It's the cabin fever song, isn't it?
Yes, you remember Cabin Fever.
Yeah, Cabin Fever.
Tim Curry at his absolute best.
I
Just
love Tim
what
Curry.
a cast.
Just Tim currying it up. Yeah, he is great in
Yep.
that.
He's
Oh,
brilliant.
it's such a-
I quote that unnecessarily often in especially in games where especially if I have an artificer in the group and I think this happened when my players were fighting some Grimlocks and they were barely capable of speech, it was very like unga bunga, and the artificer pulled out like like one of those ballistae or those cannons that they have, and the Grimlock was like, we see you have boom boom stick. Goodbye.
Brilliant.
I don't understand why the Muppets haven't done more things like that, because the Muppets Christmas Carol is also one of my I think it's
Classic.
probably my favorite Christmas movie,
Yep.
and Muppets Treasure Island, incredible. Just do that.
I sadly know the reason. They were bought by Disney.
That's true. The corporate,
they fired Frank Oz.
Yeah, I heard about that. I was like, how do you fire Frank? His name is synonymous with Muppets and puppetry. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. Because some complete random playing Miss Piggy. It doesn't sound anything like Miss Piggy.
It's not right.
No, it's not right. It's not right. Yeah, you're right though, James. Those films were great. Like Muppets Christmas Carol. If that's on Christmas Day morning, it's Christmas Day.
Yeah,
I'm like,
watch it.
Oh, it's Christmas Day. Muppets Christmas Carol's on. Amazing.
I love the articles that are always like, oh, you can watch the Muppet Christmas Carol. It's a fantastic film, but you need to know that Sir Michael Caine, treats it as if it was a serious project the whole time. He doesn't know that he's in a movie with Muppets. He just treats them like real actors, and for that exact reason, it's stellar. It's shot so well.
I think I read somewhere that someone put it perfectly. It was like the reason Muppets Christmas Carol works so well is because Michael Caine treats all the Muppets like they're humans.
Yep.
And Tim Curry works in the Muppets movie because he acts like a Muppet.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
What would be a good Muppet movie adaptation? Like, what movie or franchise would work super well as the Muppets?
That's a good point. I feel like I'd love to see like a Lord of the Rings, but it would be too long. You wouldn't be able to get it all in.
Yes, that'd be good.
In that one
follow-up question, in that universe that we have a Lord of the Rings trilogy with the Muppets, who would be the one central sort of live action
Ian McKellen
player?
As Gandalf.
Ian McKellen as Gandalf.
Yeah.
Everyone else is the Muppet.
I would definitely like to see a live action version of Pigs in Space. I don't know if you guys remember the Muppet Show when it used to be on TV. They used to, so on the original Muppet Show in the 70s, they'd have like a skit called Pigs in Space, and it was basically basically a load of pigs with Miss Piggy, and they were like on board like the Enterprise flying through space. And
yes,
basically that. But that would be fun if they did like a TV show called Pigs in Space.
Actually, It's like a Star Trek Muppets movie. That would be cool.
It would
That'd
be
be funny,
phenomenal.
wouldn't it?
That would be cool.
And
Yeah, that'd be fun.
you get a Sir Patrick Stewart to come back and reprise his role as Picard, but everybody else is Muppets.
Yes. Everyone else is Muppets.
Exactly.
Exactly. Just the best Shakespearean actors surrounded by Muppets constantly. That's what we want.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. You guys ever seen Galaxy Quest?
Yes. I actually just rewatched that not that long ago. It's such a good film.
I've not seen it. I've never seen it.
No, you've not seen it. Oh, it is
it's
been
like
a long time.
Space nerd as well. I've never.
That's right. It is the perfect parody that we needed of Star Trek without it being up its own butt, essentially, about Star Trek. It's heavily influenced and inspired by it. You can see it everywhere, but it doesn't directly make fun of Star Trek as much as it directly makes fun of itself. Kind of, it's very tongue in cheek. Or of the culture around it, right? Like the conventions and the signings and the nerds and the uber nerds that more know about the show than the actors on the show and stuff like that. It's it's great. Alan Rickman is in it, basically doing exactly what you'd think Alan Rickman would do.
Amazing.
Playing an over-the-top character and being very annoyed by it. Like it's so meta in and of itself. It's great.
That is awesome. I heard that Christopher Eccleston was basically what Alan Rickman's character was in Galaxy Quest. Christopher Eccleston behaved exactly that way when he played the Dark Elf in Thor, the Thor film that came out.
Yeah. Oh, Christopher Eccleston. Oh my god.
He sued them. He sued Disney because he in his contract there was nothing that said that he was going to be in makeup for 6 hours every day.
Ooh. Yeah.
He had to get up at 3 a.m., which, to be fair, you would be pretty pissed off about.
Sure. Having to do that and then take it off and then get up early the next morning doing it all over again. I was watching an interview not that long ago with Jim Carrey, and he was talking about his Grinch movie and how, I don't know if you guys know this, it's kind of like a factoid that goes around the internet. They hired, I think it was CIA, like a CIA agent who trains operatives how to resist torture, because that's how horrible it was to get into the suit for Jim Carrey. And sometimes he opted to just sleep in his suit rather than have to go through the agonizing process of applying it and all the makeup and all the fur.
Oh my good god!
Yeah, I do remember reading that and thinking that's totally insane. Like I love the film, but I don't want anyone to have been tortured to bring it to me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
fair
apparently
enough.
That bad.
That's insane. And I understand why the studios lean more into CG and mocap and stuff now, because rather and especially actors maybe don't mind it as much, rather than having to go and sit in a chair for 7 or 8 hours a day, having this makeup applied, and then have CGI put over the top of that too, as well, in a lot of cases.
Yeah. It's pain.
It's pain. Gotta suffer for your art.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've been dying to share this because it literally only just happened yesterday, and it has nothing to do with Muppets or anything that we're talking about or D&D. But yesterday, I think I saw my favorite film of the year and possibly of the last few years, which was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So that is already out of theaters and on Netflix, and I didn't catch it when it was in theaters. But holy mackerel, is that a good film. The first thing I wanted to do as soon as I finished it was go back and watch it again.
Yeah, I've heard it's superb. Yeah, I've heard it's really good.
Yeah, I've still not seen it, but I do need to.
Have you seen the first one, Into the Spider-Verse?
Also, no.
Gotta get you to watch it. It is phenomenal. Honestly, the work that they do on it is so beautiful and so rich. The writing, the voice acting, and by the way, the second movie, Across the Spider-Verse, has a stacked cast. Because if it's about multiple Spider-Men in multiple different realities and universes, you see a bunch of Spider-Men referenced, and just a treasure trove of actors and known actors in it as well, including, in some instances, live action actors in the animated film, right? Very briefly. But this isn't really a spoiler because they're more cameos. You obviously see Tobey Maguire for a brief second. You see Andrew Garfield for a brief second. But then actually doing their own acting in the movie is Donald Glover, who shows up.
Nice.
He's kind of like trapped in like a little prison cell. And I think he actually even plays. I don't think he's a Spider-Man. I think he's a villain. But they keep referencing him in all the Spider-Man movies. Like it should have been Donald Glover at one point, guys. If we were to ever make a live-action Miles Morales-based Spider-Man, Donald Glover should have been it. You know.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Community referenced it as well when he was in the running for it. They had him in Spider-Man pajamas at the intro to a season.
And they put him in a Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland, but he was one of the criminals.
He's uncle. I think he plays Miles Morales' uncle in that film. So he's the villain who ends up being the Prowler. I think he ends up sort of turning his life around in the comics anyway. He's not a villain constantly.
Right.
Oh wow.
But yeah, so technically, Donald Glover is in the MCU as Miles Morales' uncle.
Oh, that's cool.
It's wild.
Have you guys ever run a D&D game where you've had players want to effectively turn their party into a band of superheroes?
Ooh.
No, not specifically, and I think it would be quite fun to do. But then there are other systems. I was in a game shop yesterday looking at mutants and something else that looks like a superhero.
Yeah. I've heard of this RPG. Let me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the one that George R. Martin and his friends played when they created the the Aces series of books
Mutants
that they've
and
done.
Masterminds.
That's it, Mutants and Masterminds. Yeah.
Mutants
no classes and instead relies on feats, skills, attributes, and powers to define your character. Yeah. Very superhero-esque.
Yeah, I was having to get through that.
Yeah, that's a good question, Rob. I don't think I've ever had a whole party try and be or try and go for that, but I've certainly had players that have been superhero inspired. I think it's a little bit less accessible in a fantasy setting and in a system like 5e, but there's ways you can do it. Sun Soul Monk. That one mostly.
Yeah. Right.
You want to be a DBZ character, just be a Sun Soul Monk.
I would probably quite like to play like a Captain America type hero in a game, but shields are sort of pants. You can't just have them without homebrewing a little bit around them.
Yeah, you'd have to homebrew something. Right.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Could come up with a really cool shield, or you could just have like a Captain America-esque character with an animated shield, and then he just goes around punching everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you make him I suppose you make him a fighter and maybe.
I mean, if we're going by characters, I've always said that Captain America is obviously the Paladin, right?
That makes sense.
Yep.
Right. 100%. In terms of specific oath, I'd probably say not Oath of the Ancients. I don't really know about the specific oath, but I mostly get added when I say that Thor is actually a cleric. Nobody believes me.
Yeah, I'd say
he could be storm cleric.
He's a storm cleric.
Yeah,
100%. He draws his powers from deities because he is one himself, right?
Yep.
But with very close ties to Asgard. Even now that Asgard is mostly gone, that's still the majority of his arc is like he looks out for his people. So, yeah, divine inspiration there. Lots of thunder and lightning and storm powers. I think he gets the ability to fly at one point. Just give him a dwarven thrower hammer, and you've got a Thor.
Yeah, right. Yeah, obviously Hulk would be a barbarian, I guess.
Barbarian, yeah. Berserker barbarian. I've put Iron Man as an artificer, obviously, and I think it's armorer is the right one.
Yeah,
armorer.
Yeah. You can get flying boots and stuff, can't you? So
actually, this hardest one to classify is Spider-Man because you can't really put him in any one class. He's kind of a monk,
a druid, maybe,
right, because of the whole spider thing. But like, there's no wild shape, and he doesn't really have magical powers. He's like a weird combo of monk,
artificer,
rogue, and artificer. Exactly, because he makes his own webbing, but like only like a 1 or 2 level dip in that. And there's I'm sure there's a million articles and videos and builds out there that are like, well, actually Spider-Man is, I don't know, a bard or something because he quips and he casts vicious mockery. Which would be funny.
Spider-Man is that annoying character that is every class that someone brings to like your level 20 game, where it's like, I've taken a class in everything, one of everything. Hope that's okay. You're just like, yeah, I guess he can make quips and he can build stuff, and yeah, he can punch real hard. You lunatic.
Exactly.
Yeah, very, very, very funny. I suppose. What would Batman be? Batman would be
that's a good
artificer
question.
as well.
Rogue.
Rogue artificer.
I suppose he'd be a rogue.
Rogue artificer, shadow monk. So basically, Spider-Man just in a darker way.
For quite an unpopular class, we're drawing on monk quite a bit.
Listen, because the flavor and the theory of monk is quite good. Although you could make an argument that he'd be like a fighter, but probably not a battle master fighter, because that's so heavily based on helping your companions as well, and he typically works alone. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure there's other builds out there. He's definitely a multi-class of some kind. There's a fighter. I totally feel Shadow Monk in there somewhere, because he clings to them so well, and obviously Artificer for his gadgets. So
yeah.
What about the Silver Surfer?
Oh God.
I don't know enough about him to make that judgment call. I never saw the film, and I know like he's supposedly a super overpowered character in the lore.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's a bit too full on.
Druid.
I couldn't work out a class. Maybe a cleric because he's a herald.
Oh, is he really?
Who's
for Galactus?
Maybe something like maybe I think a centaur cleric.
A centaur cleric because he's got a different part of him.
Just yeah, well, he doesn't have a.
I love that.
That would be ridiculous. So yeah, give him horse legs instead.
Amazing. Very cool.
Hawkeye would be a ranger, wouldn't he?
Yeah, or
really easy, like
an arcane fighter or an arcane archer fighter.
Yeah.
I think actually that's how I put him once. Black Widow, definitely rogue. Yeah, I know we're mostly doing MCU, but there's lots of builds out there. Black Panther was definitely a monk. I have that.
Yeah. What do you think the main differences is between DC and MCU in terms of like their basis for superheroes? Because I always thought it would be, because my sort of understanding when I looked at like DC is that it's more focused on secret identities than what MCU is. More about like they I don't know. It's like obviously like Clark Kent is Superman. They're more about like their other sides of their characters rather than in the MCU. It's like I suppose Tony Stark to a certain degree, but with what's his chops, Captain America. His alter ego is kind of he's always Captain America. Yeah, he's always himself.
I think you're right. I can only really judge from the MCU versus the DCU because while obviously I grew up with these characters and I watched movies and cartoon series as a kid, I wasn't a comic book guy. I didn't buy and read comic books very much. So purely judging from their movie counterparts, right? Or their film counterparts. I think you're right, Rob. Honestly, I think the DCU is a little bit more, or DCEU is more focused on the duality of a superhero and the kind of alternate lives they lead, with some exceptions. Obviously, Wonder Woman is kind of always Wonder Woman, not truly, but sort of. And likewise with Aquaman, you don't see him hiding that fact much. Whereas the MCU kind of just embraces the fact that there is obviously elements of that, but they're not like I must put on the mask to protect my identity, and it's more and I must be this different person. Their ideals roughly stay the same.
Yeah, yeah.
I think power level wise, there's a big difference between DC and Marvel, in that DC tends to have more higher power characters.
Yeah,
like Superman is bodying a lot of the MCU by himself. I feel. But beyond that, totally lost my train of thought there. No, the Marvel, and this is the same for the comics as well as not just the MCU, but it's based in real cities, whereas DC, they have
fictional
cities that are also characters in their own right. So Gotham is not like a character.
You're right.
Metropolis and the rest. Whereas
Gotham.
Marvel's sort of it's New York.
Yeah.
Mostly, to be fair. That's like New York's the main sort of basis for all superheroes out of Marvel.
So far, annoyingly.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Hey, Peggy Carter. You got Peggy Carter?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right, James. I've never thought about it that way, but I think DC. So MCU is like a starting campaign, and then DCEU is if you want a high level campaign, like level 17 to 20.
Yeah.
That's the characters that you would play.
Someone's homebrew. They're like, we're using Forgotten Realms. No. It's like Forgotten Realms, but there's all this other stuff we've jammed into the geography of it.
Precisely.
Yeah, it is brilliant. So what news have we got for this week then, James? And then from the RPG world?
So not a great deal of new stuff this week. However, there is a D&D studio update. So the 2024 core rulebook and survey results. There was a video with Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford talk about next year's new version of D&D. So some takeaway points. If anything functions differently from 2024 in any of the new books, the books will have a guide internalized on that to guide you through making sure that it works with everything that you've already got. I imagine there'll be a lot of editing to this as players find new things that don't quite gel. But it seems that they're keen to do that to make sure that everything that's already been released is usable. And they gradually, with the new releases of the books they've been doing anyway, been moving over to where they will be. So if you've bought the new versions of the player's handbook and the DM's guide and that they released, then you're pretty much not going to have too many more changes on top of that. So
interesting. Okay.
There's been some really good feedback for the Archfey Warlock, as it was pretty underwhelming initially from what people were saying. So that's good.
As a lifetime Warlock player, I'm curious. What have you heard? What are the changes?
They have not gone into any details about the changes, but whatever they did change, people are very happy with. There is an 89% increase in satisfaction with the Archfey Warlock. So
more Fey.
It's a pretty big jump, yeah. So for each class in the new rulebook that's coming out, they're going to get a full page art piece, and each subclass will get art as artwork as well. So when you're going through your player's handbook, choosing your class, the subclass, you'll have a lovely illustration to accompany each one of those, which is something that was a little missing in the
original PHP.
Yeah.
I've always felt that way. They've certainly stepped up their game with the art in the more recent editions. They're hiring a lot of MTG artists for those projects, and the player's handbook is wildly inconsistent if you really pay attention to the art. Like some things will look kind of half-baked and fuzzy and a little busy, and then other things are very sharp and attention-grabbing and stuff.
The thing that annoys me the most about the books is how they went from having really like incredible looking maps that in the books they'd be like, "Oh, these maps are so beautiful," just having like it's black and white, I was like, why did they do that? Like they were so beautiful before, and now they just made them like, "Nah, there you go, here's your map."
Yeah, like they did in starting with Baldur's Gate with the hatch sort of design.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah, when they did that, it was like I was like, oh God. Dreadful.
They turned that around a bit, especially
again.
So, Keys from the Golden Vault had some nice maps in, but there was a little sparse in some places. I still like them.
Are the Keys from the Golden Vault maps? Sorry, are the Keys from the Golden Vault maps blueprints? Did I see that at one point, or is there a blueprint?
No, so there is a blueprint for one of the heists.
For one of the adventures. Okay,
cool.
But each heist comes with, you get like either like a rough sketch of where you're going, like handed to you. So there's like a handout version of the map that has details missing and things, and is maybe not entirely accurate. And then you get to the place, and there is like an actual map they've put in the book for it. So there's like two for everyone, really. It's quite cool. There's one of the one of the ones I ran recently for the Spectarium game that I talked about last week. You talk to some characters who build a sandcastle version for you, and there's an image of that you show the players where they've got this sandcastle blueprint to go
That's
through.
great.
That's brilliant.
Cool. They're quite
That
inventive.
is really cool.
But I've going through the Planescape book that's just released. The maps for that are now look full color, lovely detailed.
Great.
It seems like they are continuing to improve that. And I think that's probably, I imagine it's a bit of feedback they have got.
I think that's exactly what it was. It was a lot of feedback. Not that there's anything inherently wrong with it, but you're inconsistent because you started with color maps and then you went to these black and white sort of hatch design maps, and then you switched back to color maps. I know because I remember seeing it in Baldur's Gate and being like, why are all my maps these weird red lines? And then in Icewind Dale, you get relatively nice color maps, and then right after that, you got hatch maps again, and I forget exactly in what adventure, but it kind of went back and forth.
It's just annoyingly jarring, isn't it? It's just like, why do they do it? I've never understood why they don't actually just sell maps, because I know they work with like Gale Force 9, don't they? And they do a lot of their stuff through them. And I've got the Icewind Dale rollout maps that you could buy. There's like 2 of them, I think, and they look lovely. They're
nice,
great. Why don't they just do that with all their books? They just have all these amazing maps you can buy. They make a killing.
I know. I'll always want more from a map. And luckily, there's a huge community out there that will make their own versions of these and things like that. Because so many of my games right now are online rather than in person, because with in person, there's a lot more leeway and there's a lot more sort of theater of the mind. And you really only bust out the battle map or the terrain when it's time for a fight or when they have to go through a dungeon. When you're running a game online, because you have them on some sort of browser based, if you're not doing a theater of the mind online game, if you're running something on a VTT of any kind, it's so visual already that it kind of demands their attention. So you constantly feel the pressure. At least I do. I feel the pressure and the need to provide them something to look at. And if I have to default back to the world map just to sort of describe a scene as they're traveling, I feel like I'm not doing my job right, in a weird way. I want them to see something to put visuals with whatever I'm describing at the same time. But I think that's my own hang up. I hope nobody else is like that, because I could get how frustrating.
No, I definitely am like that.
I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
So James, with this, I really wonder what people are going to do in terms of these new books that come out. Are people going to stick with what has already been done for 5e, or are we going to transition more to these new rule books and eventually to the new edition of D&D that they're working on?
I think what I'll do is just use the monsters that are the most difficult for my players to kill, and
as per usual. So
great.
Just whatever's more challenging, and I think actually a lot of the time it will be the new ones, because you don't have to rely on spell slots, and I think they're balanced maybe a little better for slightly bigger parties. They're getting better at not making them just HP sinks, where you're just bludgeoning away.
Yeah.
And apparently there are 18 new monsters in the new version of the Monster Manual as well. So when that gets released, not only
what
get new versions.
Oh, that piqued my interest. Now we're talking.
No details on what those monsters are, but 18 new monsters in the Monster Manual. So
bloody hell.
So even if you were if you were on the fence about, do I need to buy another monster book?
Damn it, they got me. They added
new
stuff.
versions of what's already out there. No, there's 80 new ones. So not only will you get updated versions of everything,
they got me.
Brand new monsters.
Listen, that's the only thing you really need to do to sell someone is just more content. That simple.
That's
it. I mean, maybe it's not that simple, right? More content, good quality content is difficult to generate.
Content is king.
Content is king, and the fact that they, there's re-releases of things that don't do anything about that, and then they just repackage it up and sell it the same way, is a travesty sometimes. Like what they're doing with this, where they're adding a whole bunch more. If they're unique and if it's not combining it from another book, that's a brilliant stroke. Literally that's what they should be doing, right? It's not, we're giving praise, but honestly, that should be the default. That should be what's expected, versus what they did with the rebranding of the Tashas and the Mordenkainen stuff. It's just, oh, we're going to combine and actually cut lore and stuff from what we've already published. So people who bought Mordenkainens and Volos now technically have outdated versions of those stat blocks, but the books were richer in terms of the information you got about these creatures.
Yeah, right. They were.
A lot of those pages are gone. So
it's a real shame. It's a real shame. So I really loved Volvo's Guide to Monsters. I read the whole thing. I read the whole thing and was like, this is great.
Yeah.
Like it'd be wonderful if they did more of those. Lairs.
They go into, I think Volos is the one that goes into hags quite a fair bit.
Yes, it does. Yeah. That's the bit that got me. I started reading that bit and I was like, wow.
I love that. Yeah.
Like, this is so sick.
And it talks about just like what a typical lair would look like, but also like how to individualize your hags. Like, oh, there's covens that are a little bit more death focused, or there's covens that are a little bit more poison focused, or covens that are a little bit more, I don't know, animal focused, whatever it might be. Like, gives you ideas and inspiration to sort of customize and gives you templates to work with. Like Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. Yep, did the same, which is wonderful.
Yeah, totally.
I'm sure Big B's Glory of the Giants, which I totally bought and have had zero time to read, probably hopefully does the same as Fizban's, but then you get things like Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, which is like, we're gonna streamline it for you. Ugh.
Yeah. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to appeal to the audience that they think they're getting off the back of Critical Role. Which is like the takeaway fantasy audience that I just want to see explosions and magic and roll dice, oh great, oh won, hooray, I'm the winner. Like that's basically those players.
The takeaway fantasy. That's exactly what it's like. That's exactly what it is. To order, quick and delivery kind of thing.
That's exactly what they're doing. That's why they're dumbing down. They've dumbed down so many of the monsters because they think that that's the new audience that they're attracting, but they're not. It's just that they're just not into it as much yet. That's the thing. It's like I remember when I started Roldark in London 4 years ago, we had a really good group of players, and amongst them there was so many people who were complete beginners who'd never played D&D before, and there was a couple there, and I know that they loved it because they'd seen it on Stranger Things, and that was literally it. And I was like, okay, cool. So what sort of fantasy things do you like? And they were like, we just love Stranger Things. And I was like, okay, sweet.
No other frame of reference.
And that was their only frame of reference. And that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of stuff that I was saying that I knew that was going over their heads because they weren't like, they didn't quite like, they weren't nerds. Yeah, they weren't nerds.
They were exactly. Like, what's an elf?
But now they are nerds, right? Now they are getting in. Now they are into the lore. Now they are like in that world, So what I think the Wizards of the Coast guys are doing with the multiverse thing is wrong, because it's fine. You're appealing to that element, but that element will eventually become what we all are. They'll love the lore. They'll love the expanse of the rules. They'll love all this stuff. Yeah. It's just you don't need to like dumb it down to attract them. They're already attracted to it.
They're already attracted to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this topic. I could talk about it for days. I promise I won't. But I think I'm 100% with you on the fact that I can't stand stuff that is dumbed down. And frankly, we're also talking about an edition that's experiencing its own changes as we go through it. But think about the people that have been playing D&D forever and how streamlined 5e is compared to something like 3.5.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or AD&D. And in some ways it services that, and in other ways it detracts from that. And there's a lot of people in the camp that are, you're watering down D&D. It feels like D&D light. You're just trying to make it more accessible. And I have a foot in that camp for sure, because the more and more we see of it, the more it feels like we get a diluted sort of product. And then at the same time, we've got people in the camp that are like, yes, but you're also, it does work to some degree, and you're introducing people to a whole new hobby that kind of opens their eyes. And this is, if you will, 5e is kind of like a gateway, right, or a gateway drug to deeper D&D lore, and the possibility of going from a filthy casual I'm like, I only watch Stranger Things, what's a dwarf, that feels like an offensive term in this day and age, to people who will start playing longer campaigns. So I can't fault Stranger Things and Critical Role and things that are mass market, because they are bringing new people to the hobby and letting them discover it. And that success contributes directly to our own enjoyment, because we get to get more content based on how popular a system like this is, right?
Yeah, totally.
But at the same time, it's a fine line to walk, because you don't want to feel like your product is stagnant, so it has to evolve, but also doesn't dilute. I get it. I get the trouble. What I don't get, and this is where I'm going with this, is what they did with Phandelver and Below the Shattered Obelisk.
Oh, here we go. Uh-oh. Someone's let JC out of his box.
So
it's gonna explode.
Excuse me while I just add another soapbox here. Okay. No. I'll keep it very brief. I talked about it before on a different episode when it first came out. I had sort of read it and kind of was a little on the fence about it. I hadn't quite, read through it cover to cover. I was just skimming it. And then I stumbled this week across the Alexandrian, which is a review site for D&D adventures, very well known, so much so that they have their own Patreon. They remix a lot of the adventures. Their remix of Avernus is excellent, for instance. They add tons and tons of content. They fix continuity issues and stuff like that. Yeah, they're a wonderful resource in case you guys are ever looking at published adventures and want to add more stuff in. But they did a great 2-section review of Phandelver and Below the Shattered Obelisk, and they said, first and foremost, it's impossible to judge this adventure without sort of writing it as 2 parts, because the first section is almost a copy paste of Lost Mine of Phandelver, which is a very popular and solid module, and then the rest of it, which expands on it, quote unquote, I had always said kind of feels weirdly, not exactly tacked on, but it feels very focused still on Phandalin, and there's not a lot of growth beyond that. Like, you're literally delving below Phandalin. It's in the title, and that's actually what you do. The majority of the module is just you going further and further underground in an attempt to collect some, MacGuffins to stop a big bad evil thing from happening. TM, right? But they hit the nail on the head with their review, and they said, you know what it doesn't feel like? It doesn't feel like there's a logical flow. It tries to be a bit of Call of Cthulhu, as in the RPG.
Really?
It does. There's a lot of Far Realm Eldritchy influence into it. Yeah, that's kind of the premise. Spoilers. Too late. But there's a lot of that, and Phandelver itself undergoes a lot of its own weird changes, kind of eldritchy changes as the module goes on. Again, spoilers. But the worst part of it is, and I think this is their biggest sin, and the Alexandrian talks about this a fair bit, is that as soon as you're done with Lost Mine of Phandelver, you're about level 5, right? And now you're ready for the adventure to continue and figure out what is the larger thing kind of going on here. And what is the first group of creatures you would assume make their presence known and lead you into further investigations? It's goblins. Again. Slightly psionically modified, which is kind of cool at the start, but you dealt with goblins. It was literally the first adventure, the first part of the adventure and the second part of the adventure. Up until like level 5, you're still fighting bugbears and goblins, which makes sense in the Phandelver context. And then for the added content, they just added more goblins. Phandelver is Phandalin, the town of Phandalin, is once again getting harassed by goblins. Like, what? You're back here? It feels like you've made no progress. And you're back where you started. So
that's what a cop out. That's dreadful.
Yeah. there are cool things about it, and if you're looking for some unique dungeons, the module has that in spades, right? There's lovely maps for it, but it feels like kind of just a sort of more modern Eldritch go on Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage, because it's effectively a very long dungeon crawl until you get to the big bad evil thing that you're looking for, and then there's a little fun stuff at the end, but that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like a huge complainer, that is my stance on it. Only because I know James and I are big Mind Flayer fans, so yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? They don't use. Yeah, what a weird, very odd decision.
Yeah.
Just
on the other side of that, though, even though I haven't had time to read it, I've heard that a lot of people are pretty actually content with Spelljammer and the adventure that came out of it and its content. So,
the Planescape one. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, not Spelljammer. No, Planescape.
cool.
Difference. Everybody was upset about Spelljammer. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. But yeah, I've been hearing good things about Planescape, so I'm really excited and eager to dive into that.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to get and do some stuff for that as well, I think.
Yes, so
Rant over. That's my time.
So we don't have any tales from the tables from anyone from the community this week, unfortunately, but we do have some from JC, I believe. So JC, would you like to share some?
I would love to share. Having to talk more. I'm sorry, but no. This one's I think kind of just less a direct tale from the table. I'll give you the outline of it. I had the longest combat I've ever run. It lasted 22 rounds.
Jesus Christ.
Bloody hell.
What do you guys think about that?
I think he must have been there. How many players?
6, 7 technically, I think.
That's not combat. That's not combat. That's a battle.
That's
isn't
a
it?
war.
That's a war. That's war. Yeah,
right. I
right.
did the math. It was 22 rounds. Ends up being something like pathetic, like 3 minutes of total combat. It lasted 2.5 sessions of 4 hours each. And here's the thing.
Hell.
I originally designed this, and number one, let me preface this by saying I didn't plan this. Okay, this was brought on purely from the player choices and from them mucking up something that they should have done very differently. But you have to kind of roll with the punches. And secondly, I kind of had the idea when I realized that they were not going for the stealthy approach, that I would divide the area that they were assaulting into kind of 3 sections rather than having the logical thing and having all the defenders come out and contribute all of their might to trying to stop the invasive party. Basically, the party was attacking a fortress with the goal of killing the captain of the guard, who is this corrupt individual that they had been trying to kill. And then, so the fortress is full of guards and a couple of mages. And I said, all right, this will be in 3 stages. First stage will be the response outside, right? The second stage, to sort of show that the guards who were expecting the party are meeting the threat and to sort of make them think that they're not walking into a trap, but they are kind of walking into a trap. The second stage is where they get lured inside the fortress and find that there are guards waiting in ambush and that there are some magical and mundane traps all around and people hiding behind doors and up on the rafters and such. And then they'll take a break, right? So they take a break after the outside part, then they'll take a break after the ground floor assault part, and then the last section of it would be the second floor assault, which is the most difficult of the 3 because that's where the mages are protecting the guy that they're trying to kill. And the guy that they're trying to kill is kind of a boss, right? Lots of HP, 3 attacks per round, not legendary, but enough to be a very difficult challenge after waves and waves of guards.
Yeah.
But because the party had players who had cast timed spells on themselves, like mirror image that only lasts for a minute and things like that, they felt the need to continue pushing rather than stopping and kind of reassessing once the threats stopped coming. So the moment that they cleared the guards outside, they were already banging in on the inside. And the moment the ground floor was dealt with, they were already running up the stairs, which is why it took 22 rounds of combat. Granted, the last 5 rounds was mostly them trying to pull their own players out from the fire and stabilize player characters, because at that point, the wood inside the fortress was catching on fire and everything was falling apart. But still, it was a lot.
Jesus. The only time I've ever got
That's brilliant.
that long in a combat was like the end of a 2-year campaign, and it was they were fighting a war on multiple fronts.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, that's what it felt.
From battlefield to battlefield over the course of like 3 sessions.
Yeah, that's honestly what it felt like. It felt like a war, like a really pitched battle. Ultimately, they were successful, though. It was a really tough fight, especially at the end. The big spells started coming out. They're only level 5, and they were getting hit with cones of cold and fireballs at the very end. But they succeeded. There was a character death, but They were revived through mysterious means in the round after, so they are back.
Classic.
It's, goes some cursed item that they've had for a while has finally shown its true colors, basically. And yeah, they even met a new character while they were there, because it was also kind of like a prison fortress. So they liberated someone, which was a new player, and they just barely escaped to watch the fortress crumble in flames behind them, that kind of thing, and help some prisoners escape. They're not a heroic group by any means, by the way. They're expecting to get paid a lot for this. So we'll see how that shakes out. But 22 rounds of combat, player death, and I think they burned through something like 10 potions of healing, and there were lots of death saves being made throughout.
Jesus Christ.
As an idea, reward them with a deed to the destroyed building that they've just walked up
from. James, I love the way your foul mind works.
Brilliant.
No, so the best part about this is they're expecting to get paid a lot for this, because the original contract was to assassinate this guy in a very specific way, and the wealthy baroness who is kind of paying for this promised them 100 platinum each. That's 1,000 gold each, right? A lot of money, especially at level 5. With the knowledge of two things. Number one, money will scarcely make a difference anymore because of the resources in this area being already so low. So they'll be weighed down in coin that they basically can't use, because she's obviously corrupt also, right? And secondly, they didn't follow her plan at all. Her idea was for them to quietly assassinate the captain of the guard so she could execute a coup of power, a transfer of power between her and the corrupt baron. And as a result, they were like, nah, let's just kill the baron ourselves and murder his family and burn down his house, which I've talked about before. So when she throws them 50 gold each, which is a tenth, less than a tenth of their original promised price, they're going to throw a hissy fit, and that's when she gets to show them that they shouldn't have messed with her. So I'm very excited. And I hope they don't listen to this podcast.
They're absolutely going to try and murder her immediately.
Yep. Oh yeah, they will. And then they'll realize who her benefactor is, who the person behind her is, and that's the BBEG of the module. So
great.
Yeah, that's what you get for signing really cool deals.
Fantastic. James, any stories from your games at all?
What have I had recently? I did recently do an in-person game a few weeks ago. That was very fun.
Yay.
And I had it's a encounter that I really like running anytime I get to do an adventure in an icy setting, and that is a lake crossing where halfway through a creature that's attacking them usually shatters the ice, and and then they're on these individual floating platforms trying to finish the combat.
That's fun.
That's cool.
That's really cool. What was the creature?
So I had a Wendigo go in and
cool.
So they're one of my favorite creatures. They're not an official. It's not.
Send me the stat block.
I will do. So it was a boss fight, and then it left, and then they had to track it after that.
Nice.
But they had taken with them a rescued owlbear cub. So as soon as that went into the water, they sort of stopped the fight and were like, "Quick, get Bidoof out of the water."
What did they call it?
Bidoof. Yep.
Nice.
I love parties. Bidoof, the owlbear cub.
Bidoof, the owlbear cub. So yes, they then spent 3 rounds of combat just ignoring the Wendigo that was trying to eat them and trying to pull this baby owlbear cub from in between.
Save him!
Brilliant.
I love that.
Fantastic.
I find the remoras from the Monster Manual as one of the coolest ice/Arctic based encounters. Do you know this one, Rob?
Oh, yeah.
The remora. Some people say it differently. No. I say remoras. Some people say remoras.
Well.
it's effectively an ice centipede, like a massive ice centipede, who has a heated body and kind of carves out or melts out tunnels that they move through, and as a result have resistance to both fire and ice, or fire and cold damage. And they are great ambushers, especially if you're like walking on a surface of ice and suddenly from underneath they like melt their way up and burrow up and attack, and it's a cool ass encounter. There's a lot of that in Icewind Dale. So
yeah, I've used some of those before. I think the Bahir as well is another one that.
Oh yeah, the
those
Bahir
that are
is
similar.
cool.
That I love using. If I've got like an arena fight,
Gotcha.
then a Bahir is one of my like go-to monsters for like the end, one of the later stages. If you're going through like you've been thrown into an arena to fight for your life,
right?
Chuck a Bahir in.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us again on the podcast. It's been a pretty good one this week. Bit of a short one, but I think it's. I've not been very well this week, so I'm kind of like battling a chesty cough at the moment, which I keep having to go on mute for. But it's.
Well, you're a trooper for doing it this week.
Oh, cheers! Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not a big ask, is it? Really? I mean, it's always lovely talking to you both. So yeah. Always good.
The three of us just nerding out.
Yeah, exactly. So those actually, in fact, I forget to mention I did mention in the Discord that we'd be reading out some answers to our survey with regards to the Roldark Marches concept that we are currently knocking about.
Yeah.
We're not gonna read out the answers to the survey this week because we've only had we've had 27 replies, which is amazing.
Nice.
I think we can gather some more though before we start kind of like flashing it out. But so far so good. The concept itself was pretty straightforward in the sense that you subscribe and join games. We're also thinking about an idea of pay per play as well, so that will also be an option. And at the moment, we're going to probably stick to just 2 DMs. And I wonder if you could guess who those 2 DMs will likely be.
Not a clue.
Yes. Anyway, thanks for joining, guys. And we will, you'll hear us again next week.
Indeed.
Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.